What's up, everybody? Welcome to the sixth episode of the Third Divide. First of all, I want to apologize for the lack of consistency with uploading the episodes. But now, since I'm done with school for the semester, all of the episodes should get uploaded in an orderly manner, hopefully before the end of the year. So, without further ado, my guest today is Nurly Yusof. She's of course going to be talking about her experiences as a TCK and how she found out she was a TCK. So, first of all, Nurly, welcome, and why don't you just start off by telling us what countries did you spend the majority of your childhood in?
So far as of now, the longest that I've spent my life in is Malaysia, which is the country that I'm in.
Hmm.
But growing up, I think it was Qatar because my dad wanted me to finish my high school there. He didn't want me to switch schools in between and whatnot. We had to leave a bit earlier, but my dad requested for us to stay longer. So Qatar was probably the longest that my family spent outside of Malaysia.
All right. So you lived in Qatar, and like we spoke before, you said you also lived in Russia and Hungary.
Yep, correct. My dad's a diplomat, so um, my dad was a diplomat before he retired in 2018. So before he got married, he was posted in Australia for 4 years. Then he came back to Malaysia and got married to my mom. Then together they moved to Saudi Arabia for 4 years. That was where my brother and sister were born. After 4 years in Saudi, they moved to Morocco. And my older sister was born in 91, and I was born in 94. And when I was 8 months old, we moved to Moscow, Russia for 5 years. After 5 years in Russia, we moved to Malaysia for 2 years and a half. Then moving on to Hungary, Budapest, Hungary for almost 4 years. And in 2006, we moved to Qatar for 6 years until 2012. So 2012, we made our move to Malaysia, where my parents stayed for 2 years, and then they moved to Singapore for 4 years until he retired in 2018.
Hmm. Okay, first of all, that's insane. Like, wow. All right. But
It's a lot. It's a lot.
yeah. But like so your dad being a diplomat, you knew that every few years or so you were gonna have to move. So were there any changes you made to your lifestyle? Like, did you make sure to not get too attached to a certain place before you move? Because like you knew you were gonna move. So did you get too attached
Right.
to the people or the place?
Well, to start off, when I was younger, I didn't really know what was going on. I didn't really understand why we moved so often, and um, I didn't really understand. Our first move was when I was 8 months old, so I had a passport before I could even speak. So I have no memory of Morocco at all. I would love to go back one day, but my first ever memory was in Russia, and I just remember it was just snow 24/7, piles and piles of snow, igloos. I only wore summer dress only for a little while. So, and then we had to move to Malaysia. And then after that, we had to move to Hungary. I didn't really understand what was going on until I was in primary school. And when I started going to school, I went to international school. And, the kids were very different. I mean, everyone was from all over the world, right, over there. And then
Hmm.
they kept asking, like, your dad's a diplomat, so that means you have to move around and everything. And I just kind of accepted the fact that, oh, nothing is going to be permanent for me. I have to accept, I started accepting the fact that um, my friends are not going to be forever if we don't keep in touch. And back then, there's no Facebook or, Instagram for us to keep in touch. It was either a phone call or email, that's it. So growing up, I just kind of like had to grow a thick skin um, of not being attached to anything, like especially to a house, to our house. Everyone had a childhood home that they could go back to. I have no idea how that feels like, because nothing is permanent. Like we're constantly moving, we're constantly packing. Friends are not permanent, the school is not permanent, the environment is not permanent. My clothes are not going to be permanent because we're in different season with every country we move to. So yeah, I did kind of have to adjust to having things always constantly moving in my life. And I think that affected a lot of my adult life as well. I feel like I constantly have to keep changing my environment. Even like here in Malaysia is the longest time I've spent here since graduating from high school. And every few years, I just feel bored. I just feel like I need a change of environment. I need to move. I need to pack and go. So in Malaysia, because I don't have a need to leave the country anymore. My dad is, we're based over here already, but I'm constantly moving houses. In 3, 4 years, I moved to 4 different houses, 4 different apartments, renting out and everything. I just need a change of environment. So yeah, going back, I don't have that sense of attachment to really much, but when I do have it to certain people, I will do everything in my power to keep it because when you move around so much, you understand the value of um, having something permanent because you never really get to have that growing up. You know what I mean?
Hmm. Yeah. So because you moved around so much, did that instill like a feeling in you that you, like you said, you always felt like you needed to have a change of environment? You keep changing your house, right?
Yeah.
Like, is that the only thing you do, or are there other things you do that are similar to that that gives you a sense of nostalgia? You know, some like a familiar feeling.
For me, nostalgia, an environment that makes me feel nostalgic is somewhere cold because of my childhood. I spent a lot of my childhood in cold countries. Of course, I can't get that in Malaysia. We have one season throughout the entire year. There's nowhere that I can really go to get that nostalgic feeling. But other than, I mean, I'm trying to teach myself to stay in one place, just to appreciate that feeling. Like I've been staying in my current apartment for like 3 years. Even with jobs, I feel like I get bored of it very easily. I
Hmm.
get bored of the environment very easily. I get bored of the people. I get bored of the job that I do because I can adapt so fast to it. And when there's nothing else to learn, I just feel like, okay, I want to move on. I want to move on. I want to move on. What's next? What's next? What's next? But then I realize, coming to when I'm now that I'm an adult, I feel like it's not really healthy to keep having that constant change so much. Maybe I'm just so used to it from growing up. I'm trying to train myself now to keep some stuff permanent, not permanent, but probably long term. Like not keep changing my job, every 1 year or 2 years, or try learn to appreciate the environment you live in rather than having the mindset of I'm definitely going to move out from here. I'm not going to stay here. I'm not going to stay here. My friends are not permanent. So in that way, kind of my childhood kind of affected me in my adulthood in a way of yeah, it taught me a lot with attachment. I had to learn to appreciate my surroundings more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you've been to a whole bunch of countries. So there was Russia, there was Hungary, there was Qatar.
Yeah.
Every single one of
Yeah.
those places is insanely different from the other.
I know. Yes. Yes. Yes.
So like, how did that affect you? Was that like, did you feel like that was a good thing, or would you prefer to have stayed in, like, moved somewhere that was a little closer to the other, to like the previous place that you've lived in?
See, I think this is the one thing about third culture kids is the concept of home is so confusing. And I think you can relate to this as well. And I think anyone who had this a similar background can so relate to this. When someone's like, "Where are you from?" and the general question of home and belongingness, I don't really know how to answer that because the countries we moved to was not like, okay, if let's say if it was within the Middle East, like, okay, I lived in Qatar and then I moved to UAE and then I moved to Saudi and then I moved to Egypt. You know what I mean? It's in the same range, the culture is somewhat the same, the religion is the same, but my life is like I moved to somewhere that's complete a drastic change from the country before. And I don't hold any passport of other countries. I've been Malaysian by nationality all my life and stuff. But is there a country that I would like to stay in? I don't know because I don't really know if I belong there. You know what I mean? Like even in Malaysia, I feel like yes, I'm Malaysian. My name is Malaysian. My passport is Malaysian. I look Malaysian, but I'm so different at the same time. But if I were to go back to Qatar, I would feel a bit more at home, but I'm not Qatari. I don't speak fluent Arabic. And if I were to move back to Hungary, same thing. I would stick out like a sore thumb. Like I would feel a bit more at home because oh, this is where I grew up. But I don't really feel like I truly belong there. Everyone would look so different. Everyone speaks a different language. Everyone dresses so different.
Hmm.
You, so it's a lot of confusion of belongingness and where home is. I feel like that's a lot of confusion that a lot of third culture kids have growing up.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So for a lot of those moves, you were just a kid. You said you had a
Mhm.
passport before you could even speak.
Yeah.
When did you realize what was going on? Was there a specific age or was it gradual?
I think I started to, when after Russia, we spent 5 years there. So I started kindergarten here in Malaysia. And I was the only one out of my siblings who went to a public school here in Malaysia. They went to international school. I was the only one in my family that went to a public school in Malaysia. And kids would ask questions and why were you born here? Why were you born there? I never really knew how to answer, and I just thought like I would just answer like, oh, my dad used to work there, so I was born there, you know. Then when we moved to Hungary, and I went that was my first time going to international school, and that was in third grade, and I met kids from like all over the world, and I started meeting kids of a similar background that were from the embassy, like the British embassy, the Italian embassy, the French embassy. And I was like, oh, wait, my dad works with the Malaysian embassy. So we have something in common. And then she would say, like, oh, where were you before? So I said, oh, we were in Malaysia and Russia and Morocco, Saudi, and all of these places. And she would say, oh, I was in Belgium, I was in the US and stuff. And I started to understand, like, oh, okay, we're moving around because of my dad's job. Like, I didn't know why we were moving around so much. And then I started to understand, like, this is part of his job. Like, we spend a few years in the country and then we move around and everything. So I started to understand slowly when I was probably around 8 years old or 9 to
Hmm.
understand, like, okay, this is not something common. This is not something normal that you just, if I go back to Malaysia, it's not like I can find everyone is like me. There's a specific community that has gone through this. That's when I started to understand slowly, when I met other kids who had a similar background as me, kids whose parents are diplomats as well. So yeah, I would say it was primary school that I started to realize that. Yeah.
Did you feel like it was easier to connect with all the other kids that their parents basically worked at at embassies or just moved around a lot, basically just other CCKs?
Yeah, oh, definitely. I honestly like if I meet another TCK, that's why I joined the Facebook group in the first place because I was I'm at a point in my life now. I feel like I miss interacting with people of similar backgrounds. It's been so long here in Malaysia, and I've only met a few. I've only met like less than 10 people who have the same background as me, probably less than five. I joined the group because I wanted to start interacting with people like me, and I thought, okay, am I going through the same challenges in my adulthood that these other people are going through as well from a similar background? Why am I going through this, but none of my friends here are going through this? Is it because of my background? That's what I was
Mhm.
trying to find out. And every time I do meet someone with a similar background, I get so excited, Muhammad. You have no idea. I start jumping. I'm like, I feel like I've known you for 10 years, you know? So I'm like a little kid in school again. So yeah, it gets really, really exciting because it is so rare.
Hmm.
It's so rare to have this connection with people. It's such a rare life experience that not everyone has it. And when you find that, it's like finding a rare diamond. You just want to keep it. It's like it's you just want to hold on to it. And I remember when I moved back, when I lived in Qatar for 6 years, and then when I came back to Malaysia, I felt like, oh my God, that was too damn long in one country. I needed a fresh start. I'm so glad we're here in Malaysia. I was like, starting a new life, yada yada yada. I went to university, and then I was going to this one class in an auditorium in university, and I bumped into this girl at the staircase, and then I bumped into this girl at the staircase, and she was lost. So I asked her if she was in the same class as me, and she was like, "Yes, I am, I am, I am." And I realized that she spoke a little different. I knew she was Malaysian, but she spoke a little different. So I was like, okay, she sounds a little different. She doesn't sound like, Malaysian English. She sounds like she's speaking English, English. So we sat down next to each other in the auditorium, and I just turned to her and I was like, I'm sorry, but I have to ask you. I asked her, are you a Diplo brat? That's what we refer to ourselves as, Diplo brats. And then she was like, no, but I have been friends with a lot of Diplo brats. And I found out that she was born in Malaysia, but she lived in Ireland, and then she lived in Brunei. So I was like, I was so excited. I was super, super excited. Till now, Mohammed, she is one of the first friends I made friends with in Malaysia. Till now, I think 8, 9 years on, we're still super, super close because of that bond.
That's-
And there's, I don't think I can express myself to someone and they could truly understand me other than my TCK friends, you know. I totally feel that. And then a few years back, I worked as a preschool after finishing my psychology degree. I worked in a preschool as a teacher, and there was this one girl I met, and she too had a quite a similar background. She was in Abu Dhabi for 7, 8 years, then she moved to the UK, and then with her as well, like we just have this connection, this bond where I feel like whatever I'm saying, she knows exactly how I feel. And I feel like I don't have that with people who were, you know, that were born and raised in Malaysia. I feel I have don't have that true connection with them because there's so much differences. They understand your challenges, they understand, your happiness, they understand everything. So when I meet someone with a similar background, it's super exciting. Super, super exciting.
So, third culture kids, like the term itself, third culture kid, isn't really as known as people might think,
Mhm.
right? So when
Mhm.
you found out about it, were you like, okay, that describes me perfectly. That's the one thing. If I had to pick one thing that I am, that's the one thing that I am.
Yes. Yes. Oh hell yes. I think I mean, I was always curious about myself. I was always curious about culture because of where I grew up and everything. I always thought like, okay, people in this country behave a little different. Their body language is different and how they greet each other is different. Their food, their language, everything about the country. And I just became so intrigued by culture, and I became so intrigued by people's differences and their face and everything. So I was so curious. I That was one of the reasons why I decided to study psychology. And when I studied psychology, and of course, in your third year, you have to do your final year project. And I knew from my first year of psychology exactly what I wanted to do for my final year project, which was, the experiences of third culture kids and how they dealt with coming back to their home country. So that's what I did my final year project on, and I had that in my mind for years before. And when it came to the time I was in my third year, I was like, that is exactly what I want to do. And then my lecturer told me, no, you have to come up with 3 topics and we have to discuss each one. I was like, Miss, this is what I want to do, like from the beginning. I've not heard anyone in this university particularly do it, so I want to be the first to do it. You know. And the other titles I gave like really, really stupid topics to work on, like really boring ones, so that my teacher would pick the one that I truly wanted to do. But when I learned about the term third culture kid, um, I think I was that time I was just Googling some random stuff, like none of my friends have said it. We're just like, okay, the children of diplomats, we just call them like diplo brats. I don't know why diplo brats, but that's what the kids used to always say. Diplomat kids
Kind
are
of like
diplo brats.
military brats.
yeah, military brats, right? So I'm just like, okay, I just know that term, but of course, it's not a formal term. So I just started Googling random stuff, children, diplomatic children, and moving around every few years, blah, 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 blah. Why are these children experiencing this? Is it normal for me to feel this? And then I came across an article that said third culture kids, the struggles of third culture kids, the life experiences of third culture kids. And I think in high school, when 9gag started coming out, right? People would post stuff like, oh, how what was it? Um, how to know if you've been to international school, the experiences that you would face, children of this, children of that, children of this. And I thought, oh, this is the term. This is what is called third culture kids. That's exactly what I am. So I started Googling more about third culture kids. I read a lot of research papers by, psychologists and everything. Um, and then that's when I was like, yeah, I'm definitely a TCK. I am definitely, me and my siblings, we are TCK, definitely.
So, you mentioned something about, when TCKs go back to their home country. So, a lot of TCKs, they do that. They go back to their home country after, I don't know, all their
Mm,
moving around is over, or at least they have a
yeah,
desire to do so.
yeah,
So, was there some sort of reverse culture shock that you received when you went back to Malaysia?
definitely. It is, I feel like it's a stronger culture shock for me than to move to a country that's not your own. Um, I'm still going through some stuff. I'm still learning about the country till this day, There's just so much. I realize there is so much to learn about a country. There's never enough time. There's like you have to go to every single corner of the country to really find out, the food, the culture, the different dialects of languages, the dressing that people wear and everything. And I did that final year project based on myself because of my experiences coming back to Malaysia after, years and years of traveling around, growing up in different places and everything. And um, my culture shock was a bit different coming back to Malaysia. Growing up, when I moved to Russia and Hungary and Qatar and everything, it's okay for you to be so different, you know. Like when I moved to Hungary, you don't expect me to behave Hungarian. You expect me to be a bit different because I'm not from there. So whatever you do, if you didn't weren't sure of anything that they were saying or their cultural practices or whatnot, it was okay. And people didn't really make a big fuss out of it. They'll be like, oh, okay, you know what, she's from Malaysia, it's fine. We just teach her and stuff like that. Same with Qatar. Like when I moved there, you're not expected to behave Qatari because you are it's so obvious that you are so different from the people that's from there. But when I moved back to Malaysia, as a Malaysian, you are expected to behave a certain way. You're expected to behave or speak a certain way or dress a certain way. And when you don't give that, people start to question, people start to look at you. So I feel like coming back to Malaysia, the culture shock was a lot of pressure on me because I I didn't want to um I didn't want people to see me as like, oh, what is it? Why doesn't she don't she speak the language, properly? Why does she have an accent when she speaks the language? Like is she just doing it to show off? Which unfortunately it is something that has happened so many times here with me. I'm not trying to show off. It's just I can't help how I speak sometimes, you know. And so I feel like there's a lot of pressure. I feel the culture shock here is a lot of pressure of I'm not sure of what is expected of me, because I grew up knowing Malaysia from just my house, which is my mom, my dad, and my siblings, and probably like a few friends at school, a few friends from my dad's workplace and everything. But there's so much more. There's so much more than, outside of my house of what my mom taught me. And the constant pressure with that, that's what I find difficult till this day, actually. Till this day, I find it quite difficult, but I've just learned how to adapt to it. I've learned how to, joke around, joke about it, not take it so seriously. I did take it seriously before. I used to get offended by it when people were like looking at me and telling me to do this, telling me to do that. You're Malaysian, you're supposed to do this. You're Malaysian, you're supposed to say that or speak like this or whatever or dress like this. But now I've just learned to, be my own individual self. I don't have to accommodate to everything someone wants me to do. I understand it's acceptable here, but you have to understand that I'm a bit different than you.
Yeah.
So yeah. Yeah, like, I mean, like, that's definitely one thing I have to stand my ground. Like, they're like, oh, you're Malaysian, you have to do this, you have to do that, you have to do that. Why don't you know this song? Why don't you know this song? Like if they say like a curse word in front of me, like a very street way of cursing or something, and I don't know the meaning, they'll laugh at me. They're like, how can you not know this? You're Malaysian. I'm like, if I swear at you in Arabic and Hungarian, would you understand? Because I
Yeah.
can do it, but you won't understand. So I'm like, I was like, you have to understand where I come from, you know. So I feel like there's a lot of I wouldn't say fights, I wouldn't say arguments. There's a lot of misunderstanding with friends and some relatives who are just so weirded out by me and my siblings that we don't get certain stuff or we can't relate to them in certain ways. So yeah, it's quite funny if I think about it.
Yeah, no, I can definitely relate to that. I mean, growing up, I've always done my best to try to speak Arabic as much as I can. I mean, obviously, most of my life I did grow up in an Arabic speaking country,
You're
but
from Egypt, right?
I'm from Egypt, but I lived in Dubai or like the UAE for
Wow.
most of my life.
Yep.
But I went to an international school, right?
Yep.
So everybody
Mhm.
spoke English over there. That's where I spent most of my day.
Yes.
So it was weird that I would speak English mostly in an Arabic speaking country. So,
Yes.
and I could definitely see it with my brothers because at home they would speak uh, to each other in English, and I would do my best to like, try to speak with them in Arabic just so like they don't forget, just so that
Right.
they don't forget how to speak it or, you know,
Right.
eh,
What language do your parents speak to you guys with?
Arabic, of course. And that's something that
Arabic.
they've done too. They said, hey, it's just this has to be your dominant language, you know.
Mm. Yep. Yep. Yes. Totally understand.
Yeah. So for you, was there ever a constant, like one thing that stayed the same, or you've done your best for it to stay the same throughout all your travels?
What do you mean?
Like,
With friends or?
could be with friends, could be a sport that you did, could be just a passion of yours, something that
Ah,
kind
okay.
of helped you with with
Mm,
all the transitions.
I would say the one thing that has stuck to me would be art. I don't know if that's a
All right.
weird thing, but
Yeah, no, no, not
art
at
has
all.
always been has always been my form of therapy.
Mm-hmm.
Has always been my escape. So, and I've always been intrigued by the art in various different countries as well. Like, of course, Morocco. I feel very, very proud to be born in Morocco. And even though I don't remember a single site of Morocco at all through my memories, but every time I hear something like it's made in Morocco, or this is a Moroccan dress, this is a Moroccan tagine clay pot or something, I'm like, yep, that's where I'm from. That's where I'm from. And I've always been intrigued by their designs and even in Hungary, like I love the florals and so yeah, there's one thing I've always gone into was art, and I started to start to get passionate about it back in when I started my first grade in Malaysia. And my mom is very artistic as well, and that was just something that I enjoyed watching her do growing up. She used to make flowers from clay and all of this different textures, and I don't know, she was just so amazing. She was just very crafty, very artistic, and she could make clothes and everything and try to implement different styles to all of our clothes. And when we moved to Hungary, like I would join an arts and crafts club and I would get into that as well. And I even in university, even in high school, it was just my form of escape. I felt like I could really express myself through art and I could really what is it? I could really be on my own. It was very therapeutic for me. It fixes all my problems to me. And I have not to be, it's funny you brought this up because I have not been doing it since university. And recently I've trying to get back to it. Like this week itself, I've been trying to get back to it, get back into painting or drawing and, experimenting with different forms of art just to get back into it because for me that feels very nostalgic, to just sit down on the floor and do art, just get my sketchbook out, my pens, my paints, my brushes, everything. So that's one thing I realized that since childhood I've been super, super passionate about. And it was for me a form of escape, really, to get my thoughts together. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And there are obviously pros and cons of being a TCK.
Mm.
And a lot of TCKs, they wish their lives weren't what they were. So if you could go
Mm.
back, would you choose to, just be normal, just live in one country throughout your childhood and have it just be that? Or would you still do it all
Mm.
over again?
Oh, that's a big question.
I know.
That is a really big question because you're right. There are so many pros and cons to being a TCK. There are a lot, a lot. Like I could go on and discuss about this over and over again. But would I change anything from my upbringing at this stage? Absolutely not. I I love the fact that I got the exposure. I love the fact that I got the experiences that I did, and do I wish I had a hometown to go to? Of course. I would love to, every time I watch a documentary of like some celebrity or whatever, they'd be like, oh, this is my childhood home. We used to go to school on the bus and this and this and this and everything. And I thought, oh, I never had that. I can never go
Yeah.
back to my childhood home just like that, like go on a bus and that's it. And would I have loved to have more of a relationship with my cousins? Yeah, absolutely, I would. Would I love the hometown, a place in Malaysia I can be like, I used to go to school here, I used to go to do this, me and my friends used to hang out here. I don't have that in Malaysia. So I think that kind of you put it in that term, it's nice to have, because a lot of my friends here, they do have those long life friends who they went to the same school since kindergarten. All their friends know each other, all their families know each other, but I feel like everything happens for a reason. And I didn't like being different at first growing up, but now I do appreciate having a uniqueness to my upbringing because it's so special to me. I feel like it's so special, and even though the community is so hard to find, the TCK community, even in Malaysia, it's very hard to find. But I feel like it's something so special to have. It's like a little, it's very unusual. It's Yeah, I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't change it. I love the experiences that I had, even though it comes with a lot of cons. With language barriers, culture, and yada yada yada, friendship and everything. Even relationship. I find that a big challenge as well for TCKs. I don't know, at least for me. And then, so yeah, but I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't swap it for anything in the world, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah, and what you said about not necessarily having a hometown and not having the connections that you should, I think that's the
Mm.
main con of being a TCK, right?
Yep.
I
Yes.
mean,
Yes.
for me, like, I'm from Alexandria, like I was born there, and I consider that to be my hometown. I feel like I have a
Mm.
good relationship with my family over there, my cousins and stuff.
Yeah.
But, I've only lived there for the first 6 years of my life.
Yeah.
The friends that I've made, I have no idea where they are right now, like no
Mm.
clue. And whenever I go back there, because uh, the way I talk in Arabic is a little different, because
Yeah.
obviously, if you live in one place throughout your life, every place has its own specific dialect, and I just don't feel like I fit into that. People always ask
Mm.
me, why do you speak so differently?
That's true. That's true. I can completely understand how that feels, because I don't know, a lot of the TCKs I do ask, I always ask like, you have a hometown? And they always say, I was born here and then I went here and then I went here. I'm like, no, no, no. Do you have a hometown? It's such a hard question for people like us to answer. A
Yeah.
lot of people that I can ask, like, oh, where are you from? And I don't know, Qatar. Oh, I'm from Doha, born and raised. Oh, okay. I'm from Munich, Germany, born and raised. You know. So people ask me, where are you from? Like, oh, I'm from Malaysia. Oh, but you sound different. Yeah, because of this. Oh, but why is that? Oh, because of my dad's job. Oh, okay. So what do you do? You have to kind of explain from A to Z of like your whole life story of why you look like this, why you sound like this, and why you behave like this. You know what I mean? There's so many components of third culture kids. There's so many things that make you. It's not just that one
Yeah.
thing. It's like the most complicated dish in the world. There's so many ingredients to it. Every part of that ingredient plays such a big role of your personality and how you perceive the world and how you understand the world. It's exactly like that. I just said um there's so many elements to you that make you who you are. And it's not just behaving, it's a way of thinking as well. Like, I realize I see stuff a little differently than my parents. I see stuff differently from my other friends over here. You know what I mean? So so I'm like, oh, I think of this way because maybe my friends in Qatar used to think like that. That's how I got it. That's how I got it from. Where I got it from. Or like, if I think, oh, this is beautiful, but other people don't think it's beautiful, and I'm thinking, okay, maybe people in Hungary used to find these kind of things beautiful. That's why I had the concept of things like this are beautiful. There's so many different elements that make you you in the way you think, the way you behave, the way you speak. So yeah, and the concept of home is just a constant adventure for us to figure out. You kind of have to, when you come into your adulthood, you kind of have to like find that
Mhm.
and make it your home. I feel like. Do you
Yeah.
feel like that?
Feel like what? Like,
Do you feel like that, like when you're in your adulthood, where you don't know where home is, so you got to make that home. You got to
yeah, I
find a
mean,
place that you feel at home.
yeah, I mean, you definitely, when you're an adult, I think you have more of the freedom to decide where you want to
Yeah,
live and how long you want to live there for. But I feel like it's a little sad for me that I can't look back, say, this is definitely my home 100%. I feel like every TCK has, I don't know, one way or another, it's really hard to explain life.
yeah, that's true. That is true. That is true.
And like for me, I mean, I feel like for me it's a little easier than other TCKs because, most of my life was in Egypt and the UAE. So whenever people here ask me, I live in Canada, so whenever people here ask me, "Hey, where are you from?" I say, "Well, I'm from the Middle East." All right. I feel like that's
Mhm.
the simplest answer, even though it's not precise.
Yeah, yeah. And how long have you been in Canada for?
Ever since 2015, I think like 6 years now.
Oh wow. Okay, okay.
But like, yeah, I mean, I look forward to visiting Egypt every year, but I know that there are going to be some people that are going to point out, hey, you sound a little different, you know, you don't understand some of the slang, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And
so
like
common.
one of the reasons why I sound different is because before I went to an international school in the UAE, I went to an all Arab school, so I
Mm.
interacted with people from other Arab countries. So their accents kind of solidified with mine. You mentioned that there are a lot of pros and cons of being a TCK, but what do you feel are the main benefits and the main challenges of it?
Mm, I would start off with on a positive note. I think
All
the
right.
benefits. I think there's a lot of benefits. I think the benefits is you as a person. You become just a very understandable person. I feel like a lot of TCKs does have this high level of understanding. they're not judgmental with how you speak, they're not judgmental of how you think. You know what I mean? I feel like TCKs are very, very understanding people. They're very highly adaptable to different changes, very open as well to, they're not a lot of TCKs that I've met are not completely strict to their religion. And if someone when thinks a specific way, they won't like get into a fight or something like that. They will like try to understand where you come from and everything and why you think that way. I don't feel like we're very, very extreme people. We're just very, I feel like being a TCK makes us very calm in a sense because you have been exposed to so many different things, good and bad, so you just become a very calm and collected person, adaptable. Um, Maybe those who are good at languages, they can speak multiple languages and everything. And I think one thing about TCK as well is that you become very independent on your own because there were a lot of things that you had to figure out on your own.
Hmm.
Even though you had siblings that went through the same things, but I feel like everyone is so unique in their own way, and I mean that because I come from a family of six siblings. There's a lot of us. So each one, two of us were born in Saudi. Me and my sister were born in Morocco, and then two of my little sisters were born in Malaysia. And so each country we went to, we spend different parts of our life, different developments of our lives in specific countries. So me and my siblings ourselves, we are different from each other because this one has the mentality of this one has the mentality of that. This one does not see this as good, but this one sees that as good. You know what I mean? Like in my family itself, there's so many different types of TCKs within my siblings. We are all quite different from each other because of where we spent our developmental years with my little sisters, they only spent it in Qatar, in Singapore, and Malaysia. That's it, and a bit of Hungary maybe. My brother and my older sister, they spent it mostly in Russia and Hungary. So we're quite different ourselves. So I feel like TCKs, they have a strong independence because they have to really figure out who they are on their own. Our parents didn't go through the same thing. Not all of our parents went through the same thing. You know, some children, yes, their parents probably did go through the same thing, but probably in their adult years, not in their developmental years. So I would say a high on a high note, TCKs does that have that level of independence within themselves, and I would say they stay true to themselves as well because they have to fight in a way to because they're so different, and there's no other way to be like everyone else. You kind of have to fight your way to be who you are. You know what I mean? I don't know if I'm answering your question or not. I don't know how to express this, but
No, no, you're fine. Go for it.
okay. All right. Yeah, I just feel like we have a strong sense of independence because of the struggles that we had, and it just makes us a stronger person emotionally as well. So yeah,
So
but um,
you feel like we kind of have a broader worldview.
yeah, I feel that. I feel that, especially coming back to Malaysia and being around people who were born and raised in Kuala Lumpur or born and raised in, another state or whatever, they do see the world just one way. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And they don't really understand people from other cultures. And, I mean, I think it happens in every single country. And, I'm just going to speak on Malaysia itself. Like, some people, they don't really understand why people from, this part of the world behave a certain way. And, they just never had the exposure. So having the exposure for the first time in their adulthood, they might come off as judgmental or something. But I feel like us TCKs, because we were exposed with people from so many different countries, we become so well adapted to different types of people, different types of environment. Whether stressful or not, we can still adapt to it. It's just whether we like it or not, you know. So yeah, in
Yeah.
that sense, I feel like CCKs have a strong advantage in the adaptability and the independence of dealing with people around them. And challenges, yeah, with that being said, I would say the challenges also come in the people around us as well. I would say on my part, one challenge I would have is um, with one thing is family, because my parents weren't born and raised in the city. Growing up, they were more into a small town countryside, and getting when my dad got the job as a diplomat and then moving around here and there is a complete different world. So they had a difficult time adjusting to the different cultures, and we were I don't know, I would say we were completely different than our parents. You know what I mean? So there was a lot of complications of what my mom thinks is right, but I think is wrong, or what she thinks is wrong, I think is right. I think there's a lot of argument in that. For us growing up in the house is like, no, why do you see it this way? I see it this way. I don't think it's wrong to do this, but you think it's wrong to do this. So I think there's a lot of uh miscommunication or misunderstanding sometimes, because just like I said again, you grow up in a specific country where it's open-minded towards certain things, but for my parents it's not so much. I would say family is quite a challenge as well. More with my relatives, because it's really hard for us to bond with them. You don't really have that, again, that hometown feeling where you can go back to your cousins or your grandma and stuff like that, and they're like, okay, does she understand what I'm saying, or doesn't she understand? I would say friends, it's like yes and no, because I feel like I can become friends with anyone, but then again, who can truly understand me when I'm opening up and everything? And I tend to stick to people who does have that similar background as me, you know. One challenge I would say is relationships, actually. It's very hard to find someone with a similar background. I've accepted the fact that you cannot find someone from a similar background and that can truly understand your uh, your experiences growing up. So I would say with relationships, it was quite a roller coaster to be on the same page. I think, do I love someone of the same blood, or do I go for, someone from a different nationality or a different culture? So I think that plays a part of the challenge as well. Yep.
And I'm actually really glad you mentioned that because that brings me into our last question. uh, how do you just stay connected with all your friends that you've met in the different countries that
Mm,
you've lived in? How do you keep those relationships going?
mm.
Or do you
Um,
find a hard time doing that?
I think with social media is not so difficult anymore. I think our generation is very blessed with social media now, because we can stay connected one way or another. You don't have to talk to them regularly. At least you can see their life updates once in a while. I would say when we were in Russia, a lot of my friends were the Malaysians that were there. There was a lot of Malaysians in Russia at the time, working for the embassy and whatnot. And we only kept in touch with them through telephone or, house address at the time. We didn't have Facebook or anything, or email. And then Hungary, when we moved to Qatar was when, MySpace started coming out, Facebook started coming out, and people started creating accounts. So that was when I started to, what is it? When everyone was creating their Facebook accounts, that was when I started adding all of my friends back in Hungary, and adding all my friends, my childhood friends from Russia and everything. So I feel like social media has really, really helped people get connected. um yeah, even like my dad, like friends that he made during his time in Morocco, who was like, sorry, where am I going with this? Yeah, so same with my parents, who they made friends with, like in Australia or Morocco and everything. They managed to find them on Facebook now and keep in touch, and they haven't spoken in what, more than 20 years. So I feel like social media has such a big part to connect people. And thankfully, we have that now. And even Instagram, oh my God, Instagram, I found everyone on Instagram. Managed to keep in touch with friends I have not met or spoken to in so many years. I even met other TCKs on Instagram, the Malaysian TCKs on Instagram, because of the small community that we have, where we just refer each other to other TCKs that we can be friends with. And yeah, so I think social media is definitely a good way to keep in touch with everyone. But we do speak to each other once in a while. Those who we were really, really close with, I would speak to them more often than some. But yeah, I have a lot of small world stories with people, like insane small world stories with people. I have this one small world story with this one girl I met on Instagram. Oh my God, I feel like she was in the background of my life this whole time.
Really? How so?
It's quite a funny story actually because I don't even know where to start. Like I need a whiteboard to explain this. It's insane. I met a girl. Well, I have a friend who stays in Vancouver, and she was the first friend I ever made in Qatar when I was around 11 years old when I moved there. And last year when COVID hit, I was asking her some like financial advice. I wanted to do some planning and stuff like that. And she told me to refer to, one of her friends who is in Malaysia, who she met in British Columbia during university. But the girl is now in Malaysia doing like she's like a financial consultant for people. And she told me to get in touch with her. And I refused it the first time. And then she told me the second time, I refused it again. And then the third time, she said, just contact this girl. So I did. I contacted the girl and everything on Instagram. And when I wanted to follow her on Instagram, I realized that I have three mutual friends with her
Hmm.
that were from different parts of the world, all Malaysian, but all from different parts of the world. And I thought, oh my gosh, how does she know these people? So, anyways, I just added her and I messaged her and I said, excuse me. And then I, I messaged her and I said, I can't help but notice our mutual friends. And we decided to meet up. We met up and we found out that she knew someone from Dubai, from Qatar, who moved to Vancouver, and then someone who was like in Uzbekistan, who I had, she's also working with her mom works with my dad in the ministry, and then she knew someone from Malaysia. So in all, like if I would tell you the whole story, it's a very long story, but we had five mutual friends, all people that I met from different countries. And
Oh,
I've heard
really?
a lot of, yeah, it's crazy. Like I need to draw it out to you. Like I think there's a story that goes with it because each person that she knows, I have a small world story with that person as well.
What?
Yeah, I'm not joking. It's like a big mind map. Like when we put stuff together, we were sitting in Starbucks or Coffee Bean for like almost 3 hours trying to map out how she knows all these people. I even posted it on my Instagram. I posted a picture of me and her on my Instagram. And from that post, someone in my following list knew her. So I thought, oh my God, this is insane. Like she knows 5 to 6 people, all from different countries that I've lived in you know, it's insane how it all connected to her. And I
Yeah.
felt like it was just meant to be for me to meet her. How did it go from UAE to, people that I have a small world stories with, from Morocco and then to Canada, then to Uzbekistan, to Zimbabwe or Tanzania, and then back to Malaysia. Oh my God, it was insane. Like I need to draw it out. I can't even believe it myself. I have to draw it out for me to understand.
Wow, that's insane. Anyway, Nurly, thank you so much for coming on. This was insane. Thank you.
Thank you so much for organizing this, really. And I really appreciate you taking the time to interview because I've always wanted to reconnect with, you know, other TCKs around the world. And I just wanted to join a community where I feel comfortable to share my life experiences as well and people that get me. I think it was a wild journey that life is to all of us, but I feel grateful that there is a community that keeps in touch. So yeah, so thank you for organizing all of this. I really hope this becomes something
Me,
big, hopefully.
yeah, me too.